She threw me out onto the street the day after my son's funeral, saying the house was hers now. At the will reading, she laughed. Hope you enjoy being homeless, Eleanor. Then the lawyer opened the sealed envelope. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And hit the like button if you enjoy stories where karma comes full circle. Let me tell you how it all began. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply allowing people to reveal exactly who they truly are. The call came at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. David's voice was weak and strained. Mom, something's wrong, my chest. I can't. The line went dead. By the time I reached the hospital, my 45-year-old son was gone. A massive heart attack, the doctor explained with detached professionalism. There was nothing they could do. Stephanie stood beside me in the sterile waiting room, her face painted with shock. But I saw something else flicker beneath the surface. Relief? I told myself grief was playing tricks on my mind. What happens now? I whispered, unable to process that my healthy, vibrant son was simply gone. Stephanie straightened her posture. For a brief moment, her mask slipped. Now we deal with reality. David is gone, Eleanor. And I have decisions to make. Her cold tone sent a chill through me. We had never been close, Stephanie and I. David had always been the bridge between us. Now that bridge had collapsed, revealing the deep chasm beneath. Of course, dear. We'll get through this together, I said, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. We'll see about that. I should have recognized those words as a warning. Instead, I convinced myself that people grieve in different ways. Some cry. Others turn cold. I assumed this was her grief. The next 3 days disappeared into funeral arrangements. I offered to help pay, but Stephanie insisted. I'm his wife. I know what David would have wanted. So I focused on writing his eulogy, calling relatives, and trying not to fall apart. At 67, I had buried my parents and my husband, but losing a child was a pain unlike any other. The night before the funeral, I sat in what had once been David's childhood bedroom in the home he shared with Stephanie. I stared at the framed photos on the dresser. David graduating, David's wedding, David holding his nephew last Christmas. But there were no recent photos of David and me. I realized Stephanie had quietly removed them over time. A soft knock broke my thoughts. Stephanie stood in the doorway, no longer hiding the calculating look in her eyes. We need to talk, Eleanor. The funeral itself was beautiful. Elegant flowers. David's favorite hymns. A perfectly arranged reception. But behind the polished surface, something ugly lingered. As I accepted condolences, I overheard Stephanie whispering to her sister behind the floral arrangements. The life insurance will cover the mortgage for 2 years. And without extra expenses. Extra expenses? Her sister asked. What about Eleanor? Where will she go? Stephanie let out a sharp laugh. That's not my problem anymore. She'll figure it out. My blood turned to ice. I had lived with them for 2 years. I had sold my own home to give them $40,000 for their down payment. David had said it was temporary, until I found a smaller place. Temporary had become permanent. And I had been naive. Eleanor, Stephanie said later, appearing at my side. Come to the kitchen. We need to discuss something. Once the door closed, she folded her arms. I'll be direct. The house was in David's name. Now it's mine. I need space to grieve without complications. Complications? I repeated. You living here isn't working anymore, she said flatly. You'll need to move out. My heart raced. Stephanie, surely we can. No, she lifted a hand. You have until tomorrow evening to pack your things. Where am I supposed to go? I asked. She shrugged. You're an adult. You'll figure it out. The cruelty was breathtaking. David would be horrified, I said quietly. David is dead, she replied, emotionless. The sooner you accept that, the better. I packed my entire life into 4 suitcases and 2 boxes. 67 years reduced to what could fit in the trunk of a car. I kept expecting Stephanie to come upstairs, apologize, say I could stay until I found somewhere else. She never came. At exactly 6 p.m. the next day, she stood in my doorway. Time's up, Eleanor. We carried my belongings to the car in silence. At the final box, I turned to her. If you're angry with me, I wish I knew what I did wrong so I could fix it, I said softly. Her face didn't change. You did nothing wrong. You simply exist in my space, my life, my way. David felt sorry for you. I don't. The honesty was brutal, but clean. I got into my car. One last question, I said. Will there be a formal reading of David's will? Stephanie looked genuinely confused. Why would he leave you anything? You're not his wife. And you never contributed financially. The irony nearly made me laugh. The $40,000 I had given them had conveniently vanished from her memory. Of course, I said. Silly of me to assume. I drove away without looking back. In my rearview mirror, Stephanie stood in the driveway until I disappeared around the corner. I checked into a Hampton Inn on Route 9, the cheapest place I could afford, while I figured out what came next. The room smelled of industrial cleaner and broken dreams. I sat on the bed and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Who was this woman now? A widow, childless, homeless, and in the eyes of the only family she had left, completely worthless. As I sat in that sterile hotel room, something unexpected stirred inside me. It wasn't just despair, though that was certainly there. This feeling was sharper, stronger, almost like anticipation. Stephanie believed she had one. She thought she had successfully cast aside the inconvenient mother-in-law and claimed her reward. What she didn't realize was that David had been a far better son than she ever gave him credit for. 2 weeks into my stay at the hotel, just as I began worrying about my shrinking savings, my phone rang. It was David's lawyer. Mrs. Fairfield? This is James Morrison from Morrison & Associates. I handled your son's legal affairs. Yes, Mr. Morrison. I remember you from the house closing, I replied. I'm calling to inform you that the probate process is complete. There will be a formal reading of David's will next Tuesday at 2 p.m. in my office. Your presence is required. My presence was required. I sat up straighter, ignoring the groan of the cheap mattress. I'm sorry, I said, confused. I think there may be some misunderstanding. Stephanie told me. Mrs. Fairfield, Mr. Morrison interrupted gently, I can only tell you what David's will states, and it specifically names you as a beneficiary. I'll see you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. After the call ended, I stared at my phone. David had left me something after all. Probably a sentimental keepsake, his father's watch perhaps, or childhood photo albums. Stephanie wouldn't be pleased, but she'd have to accept David's wishes. That weekend, I searched online for affordable apartments in senior living communities. My savings could cover 1 more week at the hotel, plus a rental deposit. After that, I'd need to stretch my Social Security and small teacher's pension further than expected. At 1:45 p.m. the following Tuesday, I sat in the parking lot outside Morrison & Associates. I watched as Stephanie stepped out of a silver BMW, wearing a black dress that likely cost more than my monthly budget. Beside her was a man in a sharp suit, her brother Marcus, constantly checking his phone. When I entered the reception area, Stephanie's face hardened. What is she doing here? She demanded at the receptionist. Mrs. Fairfield is here for the will reading, the receptionist answered professionally. Which Mrs. Fairfield? Stephanie snapped. Both of you, apparently. Marcus leaned in to whisper something to her. She nodded curtly and sat across the waiting room from me, making it clear any remaining civility was gone. At exactly 2 p.m., Mr. Morrison appeared and ushered us into his office. He was a kind-looking man in his 60s, silver-haired with gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of lawyer who still believed in fairness. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, settling behind his mahogany desk. I know this is a difficult time. David was very specific about his wishes. I'll read the will in full, and then address any questions. Stephanie leaned forward eagerly. Marcus opened a legal pad. I folded my hands and waited. The first portion was predictable. Stephanie inherited the house, the cars, David's retirement funds, and the life insurance. She nodded at each item, occasionally glancing at me with smug satisfaction. Then Mr. Morrison's tone shifted. There is one additional provision David added 3 months ago. The room grew still. Stephanie stopped nodding. Marcus put down his pen. I held my breath. To my mother, Eleanor Fairfield, who provided the down payment for our home and never requested repayment, I leave the contents of safety deposit box E3D7 at First National Bank, along with all documentation and account information contained therein. What safety deposit box? Stephanie snapped. David never mentioned this. Mr. Morrison looked up calmly. He maintained it privately. He was very clear that its contents were for his mother. I was just as surprised as Stephanie. David had never told me about any safety deposit box. What's inside it? Marcus asked. I don't know, Mr. Morrison admitted. David only provided the bank details and instructions that Mrs. Fairfield be granted full access upon his death. Stephanie's face flushed with anger. This is absurd. If there's anything valuable in that box, it belongs to the estate. We'll contest this. You're free to try, Mr. Morrison replied mildly. But the provision is legally sound. David was fully competent when he signed it. I witnessed it myself. When was this added? I asked quietly. February 15th, Mr. Morrison said, checking his notes. He came in specifically to add this clause. I remembered the date. The day after Valentine's Day. David had been unusually silent during dinner while Stephanie complained about the neighbor's dog. He'd barely spoken. Now I understood. This is a waste of time, Stephanie snapped, standing. Marcus, let's go. We'll challenge this tomorrow. Before you leave, Mr. Morrison said, pulling out another envelope. David left instructions for his mother regarding the deposit box. He handed me a sealed envelope. These are the bank documents and David's personal key. Once you provide the death certificate and complete paperwork, the bank will grant you access. It usually takes 3 business days. Stephanie's eyes locked onto the envelope like a predator. I'm coming to the bank with her, she said. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Mr. Morrison replied. Access is restricted to Mrs. Eleanor Fairfield only. Bank policy. This is insane, Stephanie hissed. How do we know there's anything valuable in there? It could be junk. I stood, holding the envelope firmly. I suppose we'll find out soon. Outside, Stephanie followed me into the parking lot and blocked my path beside my car. Eleanor, let's be reasonable. Whatever is in that box, we should share it. David would want his wife to benefit. For the first time since David's death, I almost smiled. You made it clear David wouldn't leave me anything. Now you want to share. She narrowed her eyes. You're just saying whatever keeps me away from that box. I unlocked my car. David was specific. The contents are mine. Her mask slipped, revealing pure calculation. Don't forget, Eleanor, you're homeless. You need my goodwill more than I need yours. I paused, hand on the car door. Actually, Stephanie, I don't think I need anything from you at all. 3 business days later, after submitting the death certificate and completing the bank's paperwork, I stood before safety deposit box 3537 at First National Bank. The bank manager, Mrs. Peterson, was waiting for me. Mrs. Peterson clearly already knew about my situation. She offered her condolences and personally escorted me through the secured doors into the vault. Box 337 is one of our larger units, she explained as we walked. Your son rented it about 5 years ago and visited regularly. 5 years. David had been planning something for 5 years. Mrs. Peterson inserted her master key, while I used David's key. The box slid out smoothly. It was large, about the size of a briefcase, and heavier than I expected. Take all the time you need, she said, guiding me to a private room. I'll be at my desk when you're finished. Once alone in the small, windowless room, I lifted the lid. The first thing I saw was a letter addressed to me in David's familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Mom, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Stephanie has probably shown you exactly who she really is. I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised. I've known for years the kind of person I married, and I've been preparing for this possibility. My heart pounded as I continued. You gave us $40,000 for the house down payment. I know you thought of it as a loan even though you never asked for repayment. I've been investing that money for the past 5 years, adding to it whenever I could. What you'll find in the accounts isn't just repayment. It's what that money has grown into through careful investing. I set the letter down, hands shaking, and looked beneath it. Bank statements. Investment portfolios. Account numbers. I scanned the balances, struggling to believe the figures. $185,000. All in my name. All legally accessible to me. I picked up the letter again. I also learned that Stephanie has been telling people you contribute nothing to the household. What she doesn't mention is that the mortgage has always been paid automatically from my salary account. Any money you gave us went directly into investments for your future. My breath caught. I've also documented everything, Mom. Every email. Every text. Every comment she's made about you. It's all in the folder marked documentation. I wanted you to know exactly who has been living in our home. My vision blurred as I reached for the folder. Inside were printed emails, text screenshots, even photographed credit card statements. Years of manipulation, lies, deceit. The final paragraph shattered what was left of my composure. You deserve better than the way she's treated you. Take this money and build yourself a life where no one can ever make you feel unwanted again. And Mom, don't tell Stephanie about any of this until you're safely away from her. Trust me. All my love. David. I sat in that room for nearly an hour, reading every page David had left behind. By the time I emerged, I understood exactly how my daughter-in-law had manipulated both of us for years. Mrs. Peterson helped me place the documents into a large envelope and explained how to access the investment accounts. As I walked toward my car, my phone rang. Eleanor. Stephanie's voice purred with fake sweetness. I was wondering if you'd like to come for lunch today. We could discuss what you found in the safety deposit box. I smiled at my reflection in the car window. That's very kind, Stephanie. I'll be there at noon. It was time for her to learn that the people you underestimate are often the ones who surprise you most. I arrived at Stephanie's house. Her house now. Exactly at noon, carrying a small gift bag and wearing my best poker face. She opened the door in a flowing white dress that likely cost more than my monthly hotel bill. All smiles. All warmth. Eleanor. I'm so glad you came. I made your favorite chicken salad. Funny how she remembered my favorite meal now that she wanted something from me. The dining table was set with her wedding china and fresh flowers. She had clearly prepared for this performance. She poured iced tea and chatted about the weather while building up to the real reason for this invitation. Finally, she sat gracefully across from me. I've been thinking about the safety deposit box, she said. Have you? I sipped my tea calmly. I know we've had differences, but David would want us to support each other. Family should stick together. Family. Coming from the woman who threw me out the day after her husband's funeral. I couldn't agree more, I replied evenly. Her eyes brightened, believing she'd found an opening. I'm relieved to hear that. I was worried you'd be upset about having to find your own place so quickly. But you understand I needed space to grieve. Of course, I said, taking a bite of salad. Grief affects everyone differently. Exactly, she leaned forward eagerly. So, about what David left you. I was thinking we could combine whatever was in that box with the life insurance. Pool our resources. Invest together. I have excellent financial advisors. I was certain she did. That's thoughtful, Stephanie, I said. But I'm curious, what makes you believe there was anything valuable in the box? She hesitated. Well, David was always private about financial matters. He must have had a reason to keep something separate. Private, I repeated. Interesting word choice. You know what I mean, she waved a hand. Men never tell their wives everything about money. I set down my fork and looked her directly in the eye. Actually, Stephanie, I think David told you exactly what he believed you needed to know. Something flickered in her expression. Uncertainty. Fear. What did you find in the box? She asked sharply. The moment had come, but I wasn't ready to reveal everything yet. Instead, I reached for the gift bag. I brought you something, I said, pulling out a wrapped box. A thank you gift. She unwrapped it quickly. Inside was a framed photograph of David at his college graduation. Her expression softened. Oh, Eleanor. This is lovely. I thought you should have it, I said gently. After all, you were such a devoted wife. The emphasis was not lost on her. Her eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing at all, I replied sweetly. Just appreciating how well you took care of my son. The fake warmth in her face faded, replaced by wariness. Eleanor, stop being cryptic. Tell me what was in the safety deposit box. I smiled and sipped my tea. Mostly documents. Very interesting reading. What kind of documents? Oh, financial records. Investment statements. Correspondence. I paused deliberately. And quite a few printed emails and text messages. The color drained from her face. Text messages? David was very thorough in his record keeping, I said. Especially near the end. I pulled out my phone and opened one of the screenshots David had saved. Would you like to see one? I asked. This is from about 6 months ago. I turned the screen toward her, showing a message she had sent her sister. God, I can't wait until that old bat finally moves out. Then we can turn her room into the home gym I've been wanting. Stephanie lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back smoothly. There are dozens more, I said conversationally. David was very good at documenting things. I glanced at her pale face. And this next one is especially enlightening. It's you, I said calmly, scrolling. Texting Marcus about how you convinced David that I should contribute to household expenses, while the mortgage was already being paid from his salary. Stop. Stephanie's voice was barely a whisper. And here, I continued, is the email where you laugh with your sister about how gullible I am. How easy it was to make me feel like a burden. Even though you'd already planned to throw me out after David's death. I set the phone down and looked at her with mild curiosity. That was very forward-thinking of you, I said. Planning my eviction while David was still alive. Stephanie's composure finally shattered. He had no right to save private messages. Actually, I replied, leaning back. He had every right. It was his home. And you were discussing his mother. I folded my hands. The real question is, what do we do now? Her mask was completely gone, revealing the calculating woman beneath. What do you want from me? Want? I echoed. I never wanted anything from you, Stephanie. Not then. Not now. Then why are you doing this? Why humiliate me? I considered her question carefully. You're right. There's no point in humiliating you. You've done an excellent job of that yourself. She stared confused. I don't understand. You threw me out the day after my son's funeral. You told me I was worthless. That David only felt sorry for me. That I contributed nothing to your household. I stood slowly. But here's what you didn't understand about David. He saw everything. Every cruel remark. Every manipulation. Every lie. Stephanie gripped the edge of the table, knuckles turning white. And the most beautiful part? I continued. He documented it all. Not to hurt you. To protect me. Because he knew that once he was gone, you'd show exactly who you are. You can't prove any of this would hold up in court, she hissed. Court. I laughed softly, surprising even myself. Oh, sweetheart, I'm not taking you to court. She blinked. You're not. Why would I? You've already given me everything I need. She shook her head. I don't understand what you're saying. I pulled the thick folder from my bag and placed it on the table. David left me more than screenshots, Stephanie. He left 5 years of evidence showing exactly how you manipulated both of us. She stared at the folder as though it might bite. Bank records proving the mortgage was paid from David's salary the entire time I lived here. Emails between you and Marcus discussing how to handle the Eleanor situation. Credit card statements showing luxury purchases on the same days. You told David you couldn't afford basic household items. Stephanie's breathing grew shallow. David saved everything, I said, including emails where you called him a pushover and joked about how easy he was to manipulate into thinking I was a financial burden. That one hit home. She flinched as if struck. You know what I found most interesting? I opened the folder. This thread where you and Marcus discussed having me declared incompetent so you could access my pension and Social Security. That's not, we never. No, you never followed through. Do you know why? Because David discovered your plan and took steps to protect me. Her eyes widened. What steps? I smiled pleasantly. You don't think I have anything worth protecting? She opened her mouth then closed it. That's interesting, I continued, because according to these investment statements, I apparently have quite a lot worth protecting. Money David carefully grew for 5 years. That's impossible, she whispered. You're living in a hotel. I'm in a hotel by choice while I plan my next move. Not because I can't afford better. Silence stretched between us. I could almost see her calculating numbers in her head. How much? She finally asked. How much did David leave you? I closed the folder and stood. That's none of your business. I'm his wife. I have a right to know. You had a right to what he left you, I replied. Which was generous. The house, the cars, the life insurance, his retirement accounts. I'd say you did very well. She shot up, chair scraping loudly. You manipulative old witch. You're trying to steal what's mine. Steal? I raised an eyebrow. How exactly am I stealing anything? Everything I have was legally left to me by my son. He was my husband. Yes, I said calmly. And apparently he knew exactly what kind of wife you were. The words hung in the air. Stephanie's face flushed with fury and panic. I want to see those bank statements, she demanded. I'm sure you do, I replied. But let me ask you something. What exactly do you think you can threaten me with now? You already threw me out. Humiliated me. Told me I was worthless. What power do you believe you still hold? She stared for a long moment, then shifted tactics. Eleanor, please. Let's be reasonable. Her voice softened into false pleading. I've been difficult since David died. I was grieving. I didn't think clearly. We're family. We should work together. Family, I repeated. Like when you said David felt sorry for me. When you said I contributed nothing. I didn't mean it. I was upset. Oh, but you did mean it. David saved you saying the same things to multiple people, over many years. Her mask cracked again. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry I made you leave. I'm sorry for everything. Now can we please talk about this money like adults? There's nothing to discuss. Of course there is. If David left you a significant amount, we need to manage it properly. I know excellent financial advisors. You mean you want to control it? I said. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Picked up my purse. Stephanie, the money David left me isn't a random inheritance. It's the return on the $40,000 I gave you for your down payment, plus 5 years of careful investing. Her mouth fell open. $40,000? David said it was a family contribution. He said that to preserve your pride. But he never forgot it was a loan. I could see her mind racing. If $40,000 was invested for 5 years, how much is it worth now? She whispered. I opened the banking app the bank had helped me set up. The balance filled the screen. $185,000. I turned the phone toward her. Stephanie went pale, gripping the table to steady herself. That's impossible. David was a careful investor, I said, and very motivated to ensure his mother was secure. But that's almost as much as the life insurance. Yes, it is. That money should be part of the estate. It should be split between us. Should it? Based on what legal principle? Because I'm his wife, and you're just his mother. The word struck hard. But instead of pain, I felt clarity. I looked at her calmly. You know what, Stephanie? You're absolutely right. Yes, I said calmly. I am just his mother. The woman who gave birth to him, raised him, supported him through college, and lent him the down payment for the house where you threw me out like garbage. I stood and swung my purse over my shoulder. And apparently, that was enough for David to make sure I'd never have to depend on anyone's charity again. Wait, Stephanie called as I turned toward the door. Eleanor, wait. We can work this out. Please. Sit down. Let's talk rationally. I paused in the doorway and turned back. What exactly do you think we need to work out? The money situation. Our relationship. Everything, she said quickly, panic tightening her voice. Look, I know I made mistakes. I was stressed after David's death. I was worried about finances. I took it out on you. But we can fix this. I'm sure you were worried about finances, I replied quietly. But not for the reasons you're claiming. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled one last document from David's folder, the one I'd saved for the end. It means David also documented your spending habits, Stephanie. including the $15,000 you charged to credit cards in the month before he died. Her face drained of color. Spa treatments, designer clothes, a weekend in New York with your sister, all while telling David you were worried about money for groceries. I wasn't. You weren't. I raised an eyebrow, planning to live off his life insurance while getting rid of the inconvenient mother-in-law who might interfere with your lifestyle. Stephanie sank back into her chair, the fight leaving her body. You don't understand the pressure I was under, she whispered. What pressure? Everyone expected me to be perfect. The perfect wife. The perfect hostess. David's colleagues. The neighbors. My family. Do you know how exhausting it is to maintain appearances? I looked at her, designer dress, luxury home, expensive decor, complaining about the burden of appearances. No, Stephanie, I don't. Because I was too busy actually caring for your husband, while you were busy spending his money. I loved David, she cried. You loved what David provided. There's a difference. Tears ran down her face now, smearing her flawless makeup. I can't lose everything, she sobbed. I can't go back to being nobody. You're not nobody, I said. You're David's widow. You inherited a $500,000 house, a $200,000 life insurance policy, and his retirement accounts. You're financially secure for life if you manage it wisely. But it's not enough for the life I planned. Then maybe you planned the wrong life. I turned toward the door again. This time she didn't call out. Instead, I heard a soft thud. I turned back to see Stephanie slumped forward in her chair, face pale, breathing shallow. For a moment, I thought she was having a medical emergency. Then I recognized what it really was. Defeat. The moment someone realizes they've lost everything they believed they were entitled to, and no charm, manipulation, or cruelty can get it back. I can't, she whispered. I can't lose everything. You're not losing everything, Stephanie, I said gently. You're losing the things that never truly belonged to you in the first place. I left her there in her elegant dining room, surrounded by wedding china and a carefully constructed life built on illusion, and stepped out into the sunlight of my new beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's justice arriving exactly when it's needed. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it comes with a healthy bank balance and the knowledge that the child you raised grew into exactly the man you hoped he'd be. David had taken care of me after all, just as he'd always promised. Even from beyond the grave, my son kept his word. And more than any amount of money, that was the greatest gift he could have given me. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.